What's going on, guys? This is Bradley. I am by myself today. Zach is on vacation. He couldn't make it, but I still wanted to get on here and sort of summarize OTAs and all the stories because there's a lot of things to talk about. And minicamp starts next week. It'll be 4 days away from today. This video is on June 13th, so that's exciting. I think it's just 3 practices. Ravens are actually kind of behind the other teams. A lot of teams we're in minicamp this past week. But after that, kind of just the rest of June off and then training camp late July. So there's going to be a lot of time. Zach and I have a lot of fun content planned for you guys during that time span, but still there's a lot to talk about in terms of things that are going on right now. Be sure to like the video if you're watching right now, subscribe if you're new. And we'd love to welcome anyone that would like to join us for this upcoming season. This will be our second full season doing this podcast, so we're really excited for that. First story that I'm going to talk about today, and this was a while ago, but I still want to sort of gloss over it, the Rashod Bateman extension, right? 3 years, $36.75 million, $20 million guaranteed. I think this is a pretty team-friendly deal for the Ravens. Getting him at around $12 million per year is a good deal for a receiver who is going to be around 700 to 1,000 yards the next few years, in my opinion. I think he is right behind Darius Slayton in, contract value. I think he's around 15th or something like that, maybe 13th. So I think this is a pretty good deal. Jeremy Fowler actually came out and talked about something that had been going on with Bateman and the Ravens this offseason. And I don't know how much truth there is to it, but Jeremy Fowler basically said that Bateman, wanted a new deal, and the Ravens were like, no, you signed a deal last year. But the Ravens gave him permission to seek a trade, and then a lot of teams showed interest. Cowboys, Patriots, Packers, those were 3 of the teams that were sort of reaching out. And then the Ravens were like, oh, we should probably just pay him, and they did. I don't want to believe that. I hope it's not true because I don't like this Ravens receiver core without either Flowers or Bateman, right? And I think I'd be a little confused if the Ravens were to have gotten rid of him. I just don't think that'd be a move you'd make when you're trying to win a Super Bowl. But who knows if it was true or not. But, Rashod Bateman is sort of changing the narrative with drafted Ravens receivers, maybe not even drafted, just overall Ravens receivers. You got guys like, Steve Smith and Quan Bolden had pretty good careers. Then you also have guys like, Derek Mason was another one. But, they drafted Torrey Smith. He had a good career with the Ravens. But with Flowers and Bateman right now, that's 2 guys that, in my opinion, are going to have nice, long careers and will hopefully be with the Ravens for a while. I mean, Rashod Bateman now is under contract for 5 more seasons. He's going to be here until he's 30 years old. So that's pretty crazy. If you were to tell me 2 or 3 years ago that Bateman's going to have 3 contract extensions with the Ravens, I think I might be pretty surprised. But that's just because of the injury stuff. I mean, he's someone that I believed in from the jump. I mean, Bateman was one of those guys that Ravens fans collectively, we wanted him to be that pick at 27 or 31. I think it was 27 because OA was 31. Ravens fans wanted him to be that pick in January. We were ready for Rashod Bateman to be a Raven, and Eric DeCosta sort of made that wish come true. And I think it's finally starting to work out, right? And just a really underrated guy, in my opinion, in terms of across the league. Third in the NFL in EPA per target last year, behind Amon-Ra St. Brown and Devontae Smith. Those were the only 2 guys that were above him. His EPA per target was 0.60. And theirs were 0.61 and 0.67. So not too far behind either. He had 45 receptions, 756 yards, and 9 touchdowns last year. So a really good year. I'd expect him to have a similar season, maybe a little better, 800, 900 yards. We'll see him. He also was a really great performer in the playoffs, had a touchdown against the Steelers, a touchdown against the Bills. And it's just nice knowing that we have guys that we know can perform in the playoffs. Obviously, Zay had the fumble against the Chiefs, but in the AFC Championship, in 2023, but he had a great game other than that. So we know that we have guys that will step up and perform in the big moment, and that's good to know. Ravens receiving room is definitely looking bright, I would say, especially with DeAndre Hopkins and Tez Walker, who I'm going to talk about later in this episode. But first, actually, you know what? I'll just talk about Tez Walker right now, who has been impressing a lot in OTA so far. And Zach and I talked about him a little bit that, Ravens receivers, young Ravens receivers kind of always impress. The Miles Boykins of the world, Jordan Lazley, Jaleel Scott. But this has already been sort of a longer stretch than those guys. It's been, 3 weeks of OTAs where beat writers over and over have said he's been playing really well. He's catching touchdowns. He's catching passes. He's making nice catches. We'll see if he can maybe lock down that wide receiver 4 spot. It's definitely a good sign that those sort of the one opportunity he had last year, he made a nice catch in the back of the end zone. It's not like he dropped the ball or anything. And listen, this was a guy who was really good in his final year at UNC, dealt with some eligibility issues. I think missed like half of the season and still had like 8 or 9 touchdowns, something like that, with Drake May in North Carolina. Had a really good year. And, it's going to be tough for him to get playing time behind Bateman, Flowers, and DeAndre Hopkins now. But, him and Tylan Wallace sort of at the back end of that receiver room, that's a really good 5, in my opinion. So, we'll see what happens with that. I think he could really lock down that wide receiver 4 spot. I think he's probably a little bit more talented, maybe probably a lot more talented as a receiver than Tylan Wallace is. But, Tylan Wallace has been there, done that, and we know he can make plays when his name's called upon. So we'll see how that turns out. We'll see how Tez Walker does in training camp, but receiver room is looking pretty good. We talked about, I think, last year and then in 2023, like, finally, these receiver rooms are finally up to par with what they were the year that the Ravens won the Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, when it was Bolden, Torrey Smith, and Jacoby Jones. Sort of a nice trio there that you had with Odell, Bateman, and Flowers. But Bateman still wasn't really performing that much yet in 2023. Now he's been really good, and you got a nice trio of Flowers, Bateman, and Hopkins right now. So that'll be interesting to watch with Tez and Tylan Wallace sort of on the back end of it, but still can make plays as well. So moving on, you got Keaton Mitchell, who is now a year and a half removed from his ACL surgery, about a year and a half. I think it happened in November against the Jags game. Just terrible. He was having a great rookie year and made the team as an undrafted free agent. Creta Parks, Ravens beat writer, mentioned that he's feeling like himself again, and he had a top speed of 22.4 miles per hour a couple weeks ago. And, she asked Keaton Mitchell what you would consider a successful season. And he basically just said playing in every game and staying healthy, which is definitely, we would love to see that out of Keaton Mitchell. And again, with the receiver room, kind of a stacked running back room, right? With Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell, and then obviously Derrick Henry, who has been extended as well. Keaton Mitchell mentioned he wanted to return a lot of kicks this year. Now, for those of you who don't know, the touchback. So the touchback used to be, was it ever the 20? I think it was, and then it was the 25, and then the 30, and now I think it's the 35. So no one's going to be kicking it in the end zone anymore. They're going to be trying to force people to return the ball, and Keaton Mitchell, I think, is going to be a great returner for this team on kicks, not on punts. Punts will probably be LeJontay Wester. Maybe kicks, they'll have 2 guys back there. Maybe they'll have Wester and Mitchell, or Justice Hill and Mitchell. We'll see, because these kick returns now are really built for running backs. Keaton Mitchell was mentioning how it's almost kind of like a stretch run play because of, the new style of how the kickoffs happen. So that'd be awesome if he could be, he says he wants to be a Devin Hester level returner. That'd be amazing, obviously. To have another guy who can, make things happen in the kick return game would be really, really cool. And also just like an offensive impact from Keaton Mitchell. He was untouchable his rookie year when the ball was in his hands. And, he definitely made some strides late last year when he came back and looked good. He had a nice play against the Texans, a long screen, catch and run. And I'm very excited for him this season as well, to see sort of how he can contribute to that running back room. And also, like he mentioned, on special teams. So I guess now I'll just stay on the offensive side of the ball. I'll finish up the offensive side of the ball, and then I'll go into defense. Just some offensive line updates. As you guys know, sort of the starters right now, it's looking like Stanley at left guard, Battle, center, Linderbaum, and then honestly, to me, I do feel like Daniel Falele will end up starting. He just seems like he has a lot of respect from the coaching staff, whether Ravens fans like it or not. He kind of seems like he has that right guard spot etched in, at least for now. And then Rosengarten at right tackle, who the Ravens would have been in a really, really bad spot if he wasn't great as a rookie, and he was. He obviously struggled a lot early, but by the end of the year, was playing really, really well. And he mentioned that he's been watching every game from his rookie season and been taking notes. And he estimated that there are 10 or 11 things that he wants to work on. So that's really promising because he already was really good as a rookie, and just the development of him, and he can play left and right. So we'll see what happens with Stanley. He just signed an extension, but if Stanley retires, 3 years from now, and the Ravens don't have an answer at left tackle, Rosengarten could probably move over there because he played both at Washington. He protected, they had a right-handed quarterback before Penix, and he protected his blind side. And then they wanted him to switch to right because Michael Penix is a left-handed quarterback, and he protected Michael Penix's blind side. So that's how he can play both. And I'm looking forward to a great year from Rosengarten. And this offensive line as a whole, the Ravens' new offensive line coach, George Warhop, rest in peace to Joe D. Tragic situation that happened last offseason. But, Warhop mentioned that he doesn't like offensive linemen rotating. So we saw that a lot last year, and even in the past. Some of it was because of Ronnie Stanley being injured. Rosengarten was sort of rotating in with Makari last year. And I've always been a guy where it's like, I want guys to get in rhythm. You know what I mean? Even with 2019, 2020, when it was Ingram, Edwards, and Dobbins, especially in 2020, it was like none of them can get going. Edwards would have a few carries, 8 yards, and then he's out of the game for Mark Ingram. And I just feel like I think 2 running backs is good, 3 is a little much. But with O lineman, I think you just got to play someone the whole game. If he's playing terrible, you take him out. But I don't like this whole rotating thing. When you have a plan to rotate the offensive lineman, I'm not really a fan of that. So George Warhop talked about how he doesn't like doing that. And he wants a clear winner in the left guard competition. And that's sort of between Andrew Voorhees and Ben Cleveland, who I'm still surprised that the Ravens re-signed. But we'll see what sort of happens between them. I don't think I really have someone that I'm particularly rooting for. I trust that the Ravens are going to start the guy who's playing the best, right? So we'll see what happens there. But honestly, an O-line of Stanley, Cleveland / Voorhees, and then Linderbaum, Falele, and Rosengarten. I think that's a pretty good line. Basically the same as last year, just no McCary. But I think it'll be as good as last year, if not a little better, just because everyone's going to improve, right? Rosengarten's going to improve. Linderbaum's continuing to improve. Falele definitely will improve. You'd hope so, right? And then Voorhees in Cleveland. We'll see what happens with them at the left guard spot. So that's sort of all I had for offense. Basically, the only thing I didn't talk about was tight ends, but, we've talked about that plenty with Andrews and Likely and Kolar. So I'll move now onto the defensive side of the ball. And first thing I wanted to talk about here was just some quick things. Bo Braden, Chidobe Awuzie, both with minor ankle injuries. Not ideal, but probably going to be fine for training camp. Might not practice next week at minicamp, but I think they'll definitely be ready they'll be ready in August. So I feel like the Ravens should sign a safety. Obviously, Ardarius Washington tore his Achilles. And Harbaugh was like, yeah, maybe he'll come back in November. I could see it happening. Cam Akers a few years ago tore his Achilles, came back in 6 months. But I'm not really a fan of players suffering long-term injuries and then coming back late in the season. Even with Mark Andrews in 2023, I just felt like you're putting in a guy who hasn't played for months in a playoff situation or a December game situation. It's freezing. usually like a must-win game, and you're putting them in over someone who has been playing really well, filling in for them, right? And I just think I think our Darius Washington could probably be back for like the playoffs if he really, really grinds, but I just don't know if I'm sort of an advocate for that happening. Because like if the Ravens are there's probably gonna be someone who steps up, right? Whether that's Bo Braid or Sanusi Kane or someone that they signed who I hope they do. Before the Ravens drafted Malachi Starks, I wanted them to sign a safety because of sort of that, and I was even with thinking that Ardarius was going to be healthy. I'm just a big fan of the Ravens being able to utilize three safeties. It comes down to, do they really, really believe in Braid or Sanusi Kane, or do they not? Like, I think Sanusi Kane looked pretty good in the preseason last year. Bo Braid did as well, but I think Sanusi Kane was a little more technically sound and sort of played his assignments correctly more than Braid. But both of them are guys that I could definitely see, making a play. One of my friends, who's a Steelers fan, I was sort of, concerned after Ardarius had gotten injured, and he was like, "Wasn't Ardarius undrafted?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "What was Geno Stone?" I was like, 6th or 7th round pick. So, Braden Kane, Ravens do pretty well with undrafted safeties. So they will probably be fine. But like Julian Blackmon is a guy I would love for the Ravens to sign. Like 24, 25-year-old from the Colts. Just came off his rookie deal. I don't know why he's not signed yet. I mean, he's not a star by any means, but he's a solid starter in my opinion. Jordan Whitehead, another guy who's been with the Jets and the Bucs, is a guy that I like a lot. Another just solid starter, no superstar by any means, but could definitely fill in, I think, a lot better than Eddie Jackson did last year. You also got Justin Simmons is out there as well. So I really would just be in favor in bringing in one of those guys. And the Ravens do make these July, August signings sometimes. So that's definitely something that could happen. Sticking with safety, Malachi Starks has looked really good so far. Rookie minicamp in the hotel, he was organizing walkthroughs, is what Harbaugh said. So it's really nice to see him already taking a leadership role, right? As a 21, 22-year-old coming out of the draft. And he was around a bunch of guys at Georgia. Think about all the great players that he played with at Georgia. So he knows what it's like to play with good talent. He'll be, alongside Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, Nate Wiggins. And Harbaugh mentioned that he had not seen them make a mistake yet, a big mistake in practice yet, no blown coverages or anything like that. So it's really good to see. And like, he's got to play right away now because of the injury to Ardarius Washington. It was going to be a situation where he could, play 75% of the snaps or something like that, but he's basically going to need to play all game now. And I'm confident in him. So I honestly don't have too many concerns about it. Obviously, even Kyle Hamilton really struggled in September of his rookie year. So we could see the same thing from Malachi, but I think he's going to be a really good player for this football team. And I think he'll fill in nicely. Jalen Arbor-Davis also getting a look at safety. This tweet is from Jonas Schaefer. Zach Orr called JAD one of Ravens' smartest defensive backs, if not the smartest. And they just wanted to see him try out at safety to see if they can find an answer in their secondary, sort of without Ardarius Washington. Also, Brandon Stevens. Zach Orr talked about how he wants all their secondary guys to sort of be able to play anywhere and everywhere. So, we'll sort of see what happens. I know JAD hasn't been able to sort of find his ground at outside corner yet. He's dealt with a lot of injuries, but we'll see what he can do at safety. I'm not saying they're like switching him to safety, but I think they're kind of just seeing how he does there and if he could maybe be a better safety than he is a corner. Because I do obviously trust Zach Orr's opinion that JD might have the highest defensive IQ on the team. So you want him on the field, right, if he's healthy. Speaking of Zach Orr, I'm assuming you guys know Ravens pass rush guru Chuck Smith had a press conference, just normal after practice presser, and was asked about Zach Orr. And I'm just going to read through what he said because it's really eye-opening. Zach Orr, someone who struggled a lot early last year. I think some of it or a lot of it was because of Eddie Jackson and Marcus Williams. I think that was honestly like almost half of the issue. Just so many blown coverages back there with those two. And, but I do think Zach Orr sort of had to figure things out as well. And like the Dean Pease thing definitely helped a little bit. But here is Chuck Smith's quote on Zach Orr. So I'm reading what Chuck Smith said. I was hoping somebody would ask me this because all year I was watching everybody broadcasting, talking about it. I saw it. I watched this coordinator stand on 10 toes. Zach Orr's the guy. I'm telling you, is going to be an incredible coordinator. When we were struggling last year, I watched him stand in front of these mics every week and talk to you guys. He didn't flinch. But I also watched him stand in front of the room after that second win over the Bengals, which, by the way, that was the game, the Thursday night game when the Ravens defense played absolutely terrible, but they still won. It wasn't like we were celebrating because from a defensive standpoint, they had a great day on us. Zach Orr looked those players in the eye. He never let the high get high or the low get too low. He stayed in the middle. I'm telling you, he was always positive, but he was tough. He's tough on the coaches and the players, and he would tell everybody, he would show everybody how close we were to actually having success. It might be the angle of a defensive back running to the ball, or might be a pass rusher that ran past the quarterback, and the quarterback took off and scrambled. Zach would stand and talk to everybody, and he led. So that was great to hear from Chuck Smith. I mean, I think we already sort of had a lot of confidence in Zach Orr after the second half of last season, but being able to hear that and know that, I mean, you could tell that he was going to be a great coach. I mean, he worked his way up really, really quickly, went from like an assistant linebackers coach to a full-time linebackers coach. He went to Jacksonville, came back here, and he's a great leader. And we see him on the sidelines jumping around with our Darius Washington, falling on his back. Just like a great coach. Definitely seems like a player's coach, and I'm excited to see what he can do this year. And sadly, I think he's probably going to be a head coach soon somewhere. And I think the Ravens kept him over Denard Wilson and Anthony Weaver because they want him to maybe be the future head coach of this football team when John Harbaugh ends up deciding to retire, whenever that is. But I don't think they're going to be able to keep him. I think maybe 1 or 2 more years, someone's going to hire him. People love their young coordinators, so he might be on his way out in a year or two, unless he knows that he's eventually going to be the head coach of the Ravens and he decides to stay. So, we'll see about that, but that was great to hear from Chuck Smith. And honestly, I'm not in the building, obviously, but as much as I am able to, I agree with what he said. Like, you got to give these guys time. Mike McDonald struggled early, right? So, you just got to give those guys time and let them figure it out. And Zach Orr clearly seems like he's going to. 2 more stories. Jaire Alexander was released by the Packers. Someone that Ravens fans have almost been obsessed with trying to acquire the past couple of years because there's always been rumors about Jaire Alexander. And obviously, he was at Louisville with Lamar Jackson, really the only other great player at Louisville with Jackson. I haven't talked about Lamar at all on this podcast, but just crazy how Lamar had Louisville ranked like 3 in the country, and the only other NFL player on the team was a corner on the other side of the ball. But besides that, Jaire is a free agent. The Packers asked him if he would take a pay cut, and he basically said no. So they released him. And, John Harbaugh said that he's happy with the team's current cornerback depth. Obviously, you got Longer Beam, Kone, the 2 guys they drafted along with Tampa, JAD. We'll see if he plays corner. Wiggins, Humphrey. Awuzie, obviously. So, but he did say the Ravens turn over every stone when quality players become available, and the Ravens are looking at everything. I believe Alexander has the same agent as Rashod Bateman, so they definitely are able to be in contact with him, have a relationship with him. I don't think something will get done. I think Alexander, if he didn't want to take a pay cut, he's probably going to want money. So he's probably going to go to a team that can pay him more money. Um, but who knows? You never know with these things. I mean, the Ravens could sign him tomorrow morning, and it wouldn't be a shock. Um, One issue is that he has played in exactly 50% of his games over the last 4 years, I believe. He's played in 34 games and he's missed 34 games. So has not been healthy recently. Um, but I think I would be excited if they signed him. You're trying to make moves to win a Super Bowl, so you got to take some risks, right? But also, if the Ravens sign him right now, they probably can't make a move at the deadline. So it's sort of, one or the other, right? Do you want to be able to make a move at the trade deadline, or do you want to make that move right now? Sort of, when you wait till the trade deadline, you can see, what is your biggest issue? Did you have two corners get injured? Did you have I'm not going to say names because I don't want to jinx anything, but like, did you have two players in your front seven get injured? Did you have two offensive linemen get injured? And then you got to make a trade to sort of fulfill those needs. So it is nice to be able to have that flexibility at the trade deadline to be able to make a move. But who knows? Last thing I wanted to talk about, kind of boring, but the kicking battle between Tyler Loop and I think it's Jeff Hoyland out of Wyoming. Let me make sure just in case I don't buff his name. But John Hoyland, excuse me. So John Hoyland out of Wyoming. They rotate every day who's kicking. So on Tuesday, John Hoyland went 6 for 6, ranging field goals from 37 yards to 52 yards. But he was struggling the week before. So that is something to note. And then Tyler Loop was doing very well before. I don't have exact numbers on the second week of OTAs, but Tyler Loop was doing very well before. There was one day someone said, or a lot of beat writers said, he had made every kick, even including a 60-yarder. But on the most recent day, Wednesday, 2 days ago, Tyler Loop was 5 for 9, missed 4 from 50 plus. So it'll be interesting. I think Loop definitely has the upper hand in the battle because he was drafted and John Hoyland wasn't. But, we'll see what happens in preseason. I don't know if they'll rotate games, quarters, kicks. We'll see. But I think, obviously, you hope at least one of them is sort of lights out in the preseason and he just continues to play really well into the early start of the season. But, Tucker was like the worst kicker in football last year, like statistically. So it can't get much worse, right? So basically, whatever we were used to last year, it's most likely going to be better, even if there are some rookie struggles from either Loop or Hoyland. Like I said, it's probably going to be Loop unless Loop starts to kick terribly and Hoyland is like 90%. I think they might go with Hoyland, but other than that, I think Loop is sort of the guy, sort of his job to lose. But we'll see. Kicking is definitely a part of the game, and Ravens need to make their kicks in the playoffs. They need to make their kicks in these big games. And like, this is just a side topic, but like September is really important. Like, you guys go back to the Raiders game week 2. Obviously, Chiefs week 1, whatever. They went 15-1. Ravens weren't going to get the 1 seed anyway. But the Raiders lost. It's like if they would have beat the Raiders, they could have had, I think if they beat the Raiders and the Browns, 2 terrible losses, they could have had the Bills in Baltimore for the divisional round, which probably would have been a completely different game. It wouldn't have been snowing. There wouldn't have been the Buffalo crowd. Ravens demolished the Bills when they were in Baltimore the first time. So just like every game matters, right? You can't, like, you missed 2 kicks in a week 2 loss to the Browns, and it can be the difference in getting to the Super Bowl or not. If home field advantage is something that is really big in a situation like that, like going up to Buffalo or playing in Baltimore. So that's just a side note for me. But yeah, that's all I had to talk about today. Like I said, I apologize for it just being me today, no Zach. But we'll both be back next week to talk about minicamp. That'll be fun. Every single player is going to be there, at least you'd hope. Um, so there'll be a lot more to talk about even then. And then, like I said, some fun episodes planned for you guys late June and then throughout July that we're really excited about. But yeah, appreciate everyone for watching. We appreciate the support so much, especially through the off season. I know not much is going on, but we're really, really excited for this season. So yeah, be sure to like the video, subscribe if you are not already. This is Bradley, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.